Everybody clap your hands. Introducing. This is the joint where we give shout outs to all the peeps, you know what I'm saying? You know we couldn't do this joint without spreading some love to the ones. Yo, check it, clear. If I just ruled the world, I would give y'all everything. Yes, we going out. We going out just like that. Yeah. We going out.
Yeah.
Just like that.
What's up, y'all? I'll be right with you in 2 seconds. And just give me 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute. We coming up.
We keep it moving like that. Yes, y'all. We going out. We gonna keep moving it just like that. Yeah. This is kind of like a prayer going out to all the peeps close to me and dear to me, the ones that's been there for my whole life, the ones that came later in my life. Yeah, I appreciate all the blessings God has given me, and I want to repay it to you like this. Clap your hands. Everybody clap your hands. Introducing. This is the joint where we give shout outs to all the peeps, you know what I'm saying? You know we couldn't do this joint without spreading some love to the ones. Yo, check it, clear. If I just ruled the world, I would give y'all everything. Yes, we going out. We going out just like that. Yeah. We going out just like that. Going out. We keep it moving like that. Yes, y'all. We going out. We gon' keep moving it just like that.
All right.
Yeah.
Good morning. It is 9 a.m., 9:08 a.m. Eastern European time, and it is 2 a.m. Eastern USA time, East Coast. And it's V Bennett here to say hello to everybody. It's been a minute, but I just wanted to tap in on a couple of news items that are current and are things that we need to be discussing. Oh, let me get this live off the screen. Things folks need to be discussing. And this news today, it's not about Puff Daddy. It's not about P. Diddy. It's not about the entertainment industry, although that is turning out to be one serious debacle. I don't want to even really speak about that topic today, but, overall, I would just say folks is finding out a whole lot, and folks is going to be finding out a whole lot more because it's going to continue and more things are going to be brought to light with that situation. I would like to see a little more, I think only 80%. No, I think only 25% has showed its head yet, in terms of the people they've been outlining. But so I want more than just, the, what do you call it? Second tier, executives, what about the first tier executives? What's going to go on with some congressional reform with the entertainment industry in the US, because they're clearly lacking regulatory outlines for how business should be conducted. And I'm not just talking about how executives conduct themselves personally or conduct themselves in terms of how they treat their employees. I'm also talking about how the deals are structured too on paper, not just what they're doing, the abuses that some of the artists get physically, and the stuff that they're talking about. What about the contracts? What about the corruption that leads to the other behavior? What about give the artist more power so these things could not happen? I mean, that's at the root of this issue. The fact that the artists have little power in the music industry, and they're basically being treated like slaves because they are. They are contractual slaves. There's no there's no the artists don't have a say really after they sign these contracts. There's no real recourse to leave the company, so they can beat you upside the head. They can tell you to leave, but they will own you. They will shut you down if you don't do what they say. They will blackball you or beat you or do whatever they want. That's how much control the they have through these contracts. So I would like to see those folks be held accountable too. But in any case, you got to take what you can get. But today, this is about Biden. This is about, or Hunter Biden. This is about, yeah, in case you haven't heard, this is Hunter Biden. And this is Joe Biden's son. Everybody knows that. People that have been following the story know that. And yeah, and he's been convicted. He has been convicted. Hunter Biden has been convicted of what? Possessing a firearm, purchasing a firearm. Yeah, purchasing a firearm. I believe that's what it is. I'm going to go into that in a second. Let me flip this off, get some control over here. Yeah. And then we also going to be talking about, oops, did I do that again? I keep cutting this off. Sorry about that. We also going to be talking about the fact that Russia has sent or has ships now. Ships now, they're already there in a submarine also in the outside of Cuba, in Cuban waters, which is right. What comes after Cuban waters is the U.S. waters, pretty much. And as you know, the U.S. and NATO, they patrol the Atlantic pretty heavily. That's like their the strongest point. I mean, if you want to attack NATO on the Atlantic, then you're going to be in for you're going to be. I mean, it's going to be Armageddon at that point. You could imagine, but for NATO, you could say. But on the other hand, NATO already has ships all outside everywhere. So we're going to talk about that too. And then the other story is this one. Um, Yes, this one, Mali. This is Mali, and U.S. troops have been leaving Mali. What date was that? They just started maybe a month ago, but they will continue to leave up until September, where they should all be out and their property, whatever it is they own. They built some hangars and some, they controlled some air ports, you could say two major airports. So they built up a lot of buildings and gear, put a lot of gear there to uh, I guess their job was to fight off the terrorists in the region. And you know, yeah. And so now finally, Mali, after kicking the French out, they've now asked the U.S. to leave, and the U.S. agreed to leave, and so they've been leaving for the past month. Yeah, so we're gonna look into that. What's up, Donnie? Yeah, sorry about the lateness, of course. Man, I've been late, but I had to I've been doing taking care of some other things, man, and enjoying also the summertime with the kids and just getting out, man. When the winter is full of darkness and rain, when the sun comes out and the weather is nice, we got to hit the outside over here. So, but thanks for coming through, bro. You might enjoy today because this topic is right up, the line of thinking that we like to discuss. Also, that's geo political interest, right? And what's going on? Political interest. also national ones within the U.S. and where certain folk find themselves in it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. Oh, good. Okay, okay. Yeah, thanks, bro. I appreciate that. I was on the porch. Yeah. Oh, what you talking about? Is that a reference to that band playing, the front porch, or are you on literally on your porch? Yeah, but either way, yeah, the weather is lovely, so got to be outside. Got to be outside. But let me see here, bro. Let me get into this real quick. Oh, first of all, let me see here. Don't I have what else do I got to put up on the screen? You know what? I kind of forgot how to work StreamYard a little bit. I gotta remember here. Put this here. Right. And right. Okay, I got it. I got it now. And now if I go like this, can I come up? Will I come up here? Hmm. I'm forgetting how this works, bro. Let me see here. Is it like this? Yeah. I must be doing something wrong. Oh, okay, I get it. There we go. Here I am. I'm back here. So, and now let me put it over here. I think that's going to work now. Like this. That's the background. And then we go. Is this not showing or what? Hold on. I did it that. Am I doing this the right way? Oh, give me 2 seconds, bro. What is this? If I go like this, you know what? I'm gonna have to look into that. See what did I do to change this. Um, but in any case, it's all good. I know what it is. I'm so silly. It's because I didn't pull up the browser yet. Let me see here. Let me see here. Let's do this. That is what it was. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Oops. Here we go. So yeah, so y'all, Hunter Biden has been convicted, right? And this is, going to be obviously something that's going to be talked about. His case and his conviction, and now I guess that makes him a felon, right? Pretty much. And why is it that every time I type up anything, Fox comes up? Fox, Fox, Fox. This is not even news. They still say Fox News. Should they even be allowed to say their news? I thought they was removed from that. I think you have to change. You got to change the. Damn, what's going on here? Is it like this? Yeah, I think you got to change what you call yourself because they're not a news agency anymore, but they still call themselves Fox News. But in any case, so where is this at? We here? Did I get the right thing up on the screen? Okay, no, I got YouTube. I got Google. Let me go over to YouTube for a second and see here what they got. Here we go. Yeah, why is this all popping up first? But in any case, he's been convicted. And yeah, you know. So let's start off with Trump. Why not? Why not? Well, let's start off with Trump and see what Trump got to say in terms of Biden's conviction. We could I don't know why. It's just because Trump is the first thing that came up. So I'm gonna have to be honest about that. That's why I chose this. But you know, we're always going to go from there and see what the opposite side says. But in any case, let's see what they came up with Hunter Biden now, and then we could talk about it. Here we go. Let's go.
Politically, I know there have been some statements flying about.
We are getting more and more reaction on this, Lester, as the hours and the minutes have passed since that verdict came down. Notably, of course, from former President Trump, Hunter Biden's father's political opponent in the November election here. And the Trump campaign is railing against what they see as essentially an investigation that did not go far enough, saying it is nothing more than a distraction from what they describe as the real crimes of the so-called, again, their words, Biden crime family here, saying that this all comes down to November 5th. That, of course, is Election Day. We have also heard from the Republican head of the Oversight Committee in Congress, Congressman Comer, who says that while this is an important step, essentially, it still does not go far enough. And that seems to be so far the theme based on even my phone conversations with some Republican strategists in the last.
Okay, so the Republicans, they don't think it's far enough. Let me just hear one more time. What the heck did he really say about this, man? Let's see here.
Now, how is the verdict playing politically? I know there have been some statements flying about.
We are getting more and more reaction on this, Lester, as the hours and the minutes have passed since that verdict came down. Notably, of course, from former President Trump, Hunter Biden's father's political opponent in the November election here. And the Trump campaign is railing against what they see as essentially an investigation that did not go far enough, saying it is nothing more than a distraction from what they describe as the real crimes of the so-called, again, their words, Biden crime family here, saying that this all comes down to November 5th. That, of course, is Election Day. We have also heard from the...
Okay, so Trump wants people to vote, and he's going to be talking about this because he thinks that Biden, that he has a crime family, yeah. They acted like... the CC, I mean, it's their apparently it's his right to say that. That's his opinion. That's Trump's opinion. But I'm curious about if he's said anything else outside of this. But let me just see if they showed. They didn't show the whole statement, right? So hold on 2 seconds here. Where the heck is that at? Let me come out of this and see. Go back a second. I thought Trump was going to make it. Let me see here. Trump statement on Hunter Biden. Let's see here. I don't know if he even... Okay, Rance Jimmy upset for you. Hold on. Let's see here. That's the same one. Biden not pardoning Hunter in a really strong contract. Okay, let's see here. Does Trump even make a statement on that? Biden. This is why Biden campaign wants Trump to on the trail. Let me see. Hunter Biden's. All right. Hold on. Man, there is actually... All right, this is right.
The jury in the Hunter Biden gun trial has been dismissed for the day after failing to reach a verdict. Joe Biden's son faces 3 charges.
Oh, no, this is late. He's already been... This is so interesting. I guess that why Hunter Biden's guilty verdict. I want to see Trump speak on it. Donald Trump accuses Biden. Yeah, they're talking about Trump is saying they rigged the election, but it's Trump who's being charged with, he's the one that they've been investigating for rigging the election or trying to change the results. Okay, let's... Biden guilt. You know what? They don't... I guess Trump only made a written statement. So that must be what it is. Let me go over and see. 2 seconds. Google Trump's statement on Hunter Biden conviction. Let me see here. Okay. Hunter Biden conviction shatters Trump's prosecution narrative. Okay. I mean, it's interesting. Let's see here. What do you think? You think it shatters Trump's the narrative about Trump being a criminal? You think this Hunter Biden story shatters that? Let me see here. Okay. As I said last week, okay, hold on. This is Biden's response. This is Biden's response to the guilty verdict. All right. As I said last week, I'm the president, but I'm also a dad. Jill and I love your son, and we are so proud. We are so proud of the man he is today. So many families have had loved ones battle addiction, understand the feeling of pride, seeing someone you love come out the other side and be so strong and resilient in recovery. As I also said last week, I will accept the outcome of this case and will continue to respect the judicial process as Hunter considers an appeal. Jill and I will always be there for Hunter and the rest of our family with our love and support. Nothing will ever change that, the president said in a statement provided to the national desk. Okay, so that's Biden's response to the conviction. But let me see here. Didn't I say Trump's response? don't they have a written Trump campaign? Here, let's see here. Do they have a post of his actual statement? I'm sure they got it on his website maybe, but let me see here.
We're coming on the air because there is breaking news at this hour. A guilty verdict in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial in Wilmington, Delaware. The president's son facing 3 felony counts, accused of lying on a federal form about drug use when he bought a gun in 2018, saying he was not a drug user, and prosecutors arguing he illegally had that gun for 11 days. After deliberating for about an hour on the first day, about 2 hours today, they have found him guilty on all 3 charges. Count 1, making a false statement in the purchase of a firearm. Guilty of count 2, making a false statement related to information required to be kept by a federal licensed firearms dealer. And guilty on count 3, possessing a firearm by a person who is an unlawful user or addicted to a controlled substance. So again, the breaking news at this hour, Hunter Biden found guilty on all 3 felony charges. Let's get right to Terry Moran outside the courthouse. Terry?
That's right, David. You've got it. All 3 counts, guilty as charged. About 3 hours of deliberation. 1 hour yesterday, 2 hours today. The jurors got to work, and they came through with this verdict. Each of these counts required the jurors to take into account what Hunter's defense was here, which was basically that while he had abused drugs, as he confessed in his memoir, Beautiful Things, as the jurors heard plenty of evidence about. At that time, Hunter Biden said, since he didn't testify, but his lawyer presented evidence that he did not feel that he was actually abusing drugs at that time and therefore was not guilty of these crimes. The jurors rejected that, guilty on all 3 counts.
Each one of those felony charges has no mandatory minimum, meaning he could do no jail time based on his record or lack thereof.
All right. So the man says he doesn't feel that he was hold on, let me play this back, man. This is, what kind of language is they?
Each one of those felony.
You have to listen to these particular statements, when people make them publicly, because they're crafted, of course. I'm not saying that means they're not legitimate or sincere or anything, but they are crafted. So let's hear the statement.
Charges has
what the actual wording they use.
No mandatory minimum, meaning he could do no jail time based on his record or lack thereof.
Okay, so he could do no jail time even while being convicted. All right, so apparently that's what they're reporting here. That's ABC. So let's hear Biden's his view, how he saw himself, why he claims that he was innocent. Are they going to play this again? Hold on. Let me see something. Sorry about this. Let me come back out and start this bad boy over. Let me see. Oh, are they going to play it back? Did I miss it? Okay. Well, in any case, hold on. Let me see. Are they going to play it again?
We're coming on the air because there is breaking news at this hour. A guilty verdict in Hunter.
All right, it's coming up now.
Biden's federal gun trial in Wilmington, Delaware. The president's son facing 3 felony counts, accused of lying on a federal form about drug use when he bought a gun in 2018, saying he was not a drug user, and prosecutors arguing he illegally had that gun for.
Okay, so he argues he was not a drug user at the time. So that's why he's innocent, essentially. He didn't think that he was, that the way the law was crafted, the wording, that he didn't fall under that exactly, because at that time, he didn't think he was a drug user himself. So he didn't think he was using drugs. He says he wasn't using drugs at the time, essentially. That's what it sounds like to me, right? And that therefore the law wasn't violated. But we all know that pretty much that doesn't work for most people. But so he's convicted of that now. And so do you think now the narrative has changed? Essentially, that's what's happened. Now in the news cycle, instead of people talking about Trump and his crime family, now it just so happens that Biden has a family member, you could say, right, who is now a convicted felon, right, until an appeal overturns that. And we don't know if that will really happen. It may not overturn it. So folks got to wait to see. But what's your thoughts on Hunter Biden? I mean, number one, the election is coming up. Do you think that this should affect the election? Do you think that this is going to really matter overall in the upcoming election, in the outcome? How do you think this really affects Biden? In opposed to your view of Trump. How is your view of Trump? Do you think that what Trump has been accused of and convicted of and lost civil suits about, and his cohorts, the people around him, family members, and also employees, people that he put on that were convicted, whether it was in his campaign or whether it was in his actual cabinet or anything like that. It's a lot of people now that have been convicted of and accused of doing things with Trump that were, you know, at his behest, that were illegal. Michael Cohen just got out of a court hearing about Trump. So do you think these things compare? Do you think the criminal activity alleged, well, it's not alleged, it's he's convicted, the criminal activity of Trump overturns and and other things, do you think that compares to Biden's son's gun possession charge? Where do you stand on gun possession? Like, do you think, this is another question I put out there. I want, if you can't hear the video right now and respond later. Think about it, right? But do you think that that's constitutional? I mean, is that upheld by the Constitution? Does the Constitution state that if you're, on drugs, you shouldn't be able to possess a firearm? You know, um, do you think that should be a state matter also? Do you think that should be a federal, or both? How much space do you think the state should have in a matter like that? Uh, Even if it is yeah, well, it's not. Let's go to the Constitution. I mean, is it? It ain't stated in the Constitution anything about drugs. Is there? Hold on, let's see here. Hunters were okay. Jade says, JTV, Hunter worse he may have harmed someone or himself while high. Is that what you think? Okay. Trump case was also bad in a different way. Yeah. Well, yeah, me, I don't think Hunter's crime harms as many people as Trump's crimes. I think Trump's crime are like big crimes that affect a lot of people generally, because the type of crimes that they are. He affects all the taxpayers when he didn't pay his taxes. For example, he's convicted of that, of falsifying property, that he borrowed money for. Also, what is the new thing? What is this thing that the Stormy Daniels trial conviction? Basically election fraud or something, committing some sort of violation of the laws on, I guess he was in an election, and then Stormy Daniels' story came up, and then he paid money and had money funneled around to pay her the hush money, because of the impending election or the ongoing election, and hence a crime, right? Uh, but you think, well, Jade, you think Trump was worse, or you think Hunter was worse? All right, I myself, I don't know about that. I think at the end of the day, Hunter Biden, he didn't hurt anybody else but himself. So it's not like he owes people money. It's not like he didn't pay his taxes, and he didn't hurt anybody. But then he's convicted of the crime, and now he's got to go to jail. So I think he hurt himself and his family more than anybody else in this situation. I mean, that would be another crime. If he hurt somebody else, he would get charged for that. That would be a separate crime. But I think Trump's crimes are against the public, everybody in general, you know. And ultimately, my personal opinion is they're treasonous. You know, his overall acts go, you know, deeper than just these things that Hunter Biden is, guilty of. The things that Trump has been alleged of and also convicted of, they're serious crimes. I mean, so I think there's more to Trump than is going to come out, but ever. But I think if he did commit the acts, especially the implication of being involved with Russia, if that turns out to be true and they have information and they prosecute him for that or not, if that turns out to be something the government thinks is true, then they're going to be probably looking to resolve that, by whatever means, right? Ultimately, but taking whatever defense measures they got to take. But I think, yeah, we're going to see how it goes. So you think it's going to affect the election? That's the other thing. How many people think it's going to affect the election? I don't think it's going to affect the election myself, because I think people can discern the difference between like this gun violation having, it's a possession charge essentially and an ownership charge. So he bought the gun, he lied on the papers, he got the gun, and now he's convicted of that. Versus Trump's taxes, fraud on the banking, Stormy Daniels hush money, then all these other people associated with him, they already been convicted of crimes. It's crazy. I mean, it's like his cabinet, his family, you could say, in some ways been implicated, if not directly, indirectly. Let me see. Not sure. It depends on the sentences. Yeah. Well, it's going to be in the media though, because obviously, no matter what, this is what they're going to be talking about up into this election. But I think it's good overall, because if there's crime, I think, I think it's good that they talk about it. But another thing is Biden had a response to that also. Like, he said that he wants the law. He stands by the law. So he's not going to attempt to pardon his son. What do y'all think about that? That's the third thing. Do you think Biden should pardon his son, or do you think he should not pardon him? Let me see here. Biden will not pardon Hunter. Let's see if there's anything out here on this. Pardoning, yeah, okay. So the conviction's already happened, but he made a statement right before the conviction. So let's find out. Let's review. Sorry, what he actually said here.
Back to the role and the responsibility of a jury, and the sacred responsibility that they have to carry out during their duties as a member of the jury. I want to bring in Andrew Weissman, former FBI general counsel and a former senior member of the Mueller probe. He is now an MSNBC legal analyst. So, Andrew, what are your thoughts?
I'm less interested in the particulars of the case. This is a gun charge. The proof was overwhelming. I agree with your other panelists that it is rarely charged. In my experience, over 21 years at the department, I never saw this kind of case brought. It would normally be somebody who is a felon in possession of a gun that would be charged. I'm more interested in what it tells us about the rule of law in this country in two ways. One, the son of the sitting president was pretty quickly tried. He was given due process and he was found guilty. And you have the current president, the father of the defendant, making it absolutely clear that he is not pardoning him, that he could have ordered at any time his Justice Department to get rid of this case. He did not do that. He has said that he is not planning on pardoning him as well. And I really think that if you look at this case, what is the big picture here? It's not a drug addict who possessed a gun for 2 weeks. It is that you have a president of the United States who is living embodiment of the rule of law, even with respect to his only living son. And you can really contrast that to the former president's.
What y'all think about that? What do y'all think about that? I mean, that response as the president and as a father, right? Do you think that was the right response? Or would you have done something different? If this was your son, would you pardon him? Or would you allow the law to, proceed? What would you do? That's a tough question. That's a really, really tough question. Yeah. Hold on 2 seconds. Yeah, that's tough because in reality, it's easy to say what you would do in that situation, but you will never really know what you would do until that situation faces you. But in either case, with this type of crime you're talking about, which is a gun possession crime, we're not talking about taxes, fraud. We're not talking about espionage. We're not talking about anything else. Like, we're just talking about he got a gun, had it for 2 weeks, as they say, possessed it for 2 weeks, and he shouldn't have had it. And the paperwork that he filled out on it wasn't true. He said that he was not a drug addict, that he doesn't use drugs, but he was already found to have been doing that. And he failed to mention that to them on the application. So, or it could be deliberate that he did that, but that's what he's fine with. They're saying, nope, that's illegal, and you gotta, face the penalty for that. But in any case, what would you do if this was your son? That's really the question here.
Denigration of the rule of the States, who is living embodiment of the rule of law, even with respect to his only living son. And you can really contrast that to the former president's denigration of the rule of law every single time he is found either guilty in a criminal case or liable in a civil case, including sexual assault and fraud. He says the system's rigged against him. So I think that to me is his only living son.
Okay, now they're contrasting that to Trump's what Trump would do. They're asking, what would Trump do? And what has Trump said on this matter? Let's see here.
And you can really contrast that to the former president's denigration of the rule of law every single time he is found either guilty in a criminal case or liable in a civil case, including sexual assault and fraud. He says the system's rigged against him. So I think that to me is the really strong contrast between the two views of the institution of the justice system, whether it's civil justice or criminal justice, that I think is speaking.
Right. So do y'all think that Trump sees the law in a completely different way than Biden sees the law? Do you think Trump's overall reaction to the law when he's confronted with it, do you think it matches up to Biden's response to that, or Hunter Biden, for example? It's interesting because Hunter Biden said he was innocent too, but he was found guilty. Trump said he was innocent, but he was found guilty. But Biden, he's not charged with any crime himself. It's just his son who is. So, so his view of the laws is that he's not going to interfere with the law. He won't pardon Hunter Biden. And so Hunter Biden's going to have to face whatever the judge believes he should face after reviewing the law, right? And the circumstances. So, yeah, we're going to hear more about that. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think this is I think people should continue to talk about this one, but for me, unless there's something very salacious that's going to come out about it, I don't really think it amounts to so much to where I want to listen, keep following up or talking about it, because if the man's willing to face the penalty, then hey, let him face the penalty. Well, I don't want to stop him. He's going to go. He's already said, you know what? He thought he was innocent, but he'll risk going to court to be found guilty. He'll, so yeah. And then that last thing on this matter is that what do y'all think about Hunter Biden's response when he said that I don't believe he testified, right? I don't believe Hunter Biden. Let me see here. Hunter Biden will not testify. Let me see here. I don't believe he testified at all. Yeah, I don't believe he testified. And but let me just see here. Let's see what they say.
Word from Hunter Biden's attorney that Hunter Biden will not testify in the federal gun case against him. This means that we could soon hear closing arguments and the jury could soon get the case.
All right. So I don't believe he testified. Now, what do y'all think about that? The fact that he did not testify. Let's see here. Let's review this one too.
Turning now to Delaware, Hunter Biden's federal gun trial has now entered its second week, and it appears that the president's son will not take the stand in his own defense. Hunter, accompanied by First Lady Jill.
All right. What do y'all think? Yeah, what's your thoughts on that? What do you think that implies? He will not testify. So I don't believe he testified at all. So let me know if it's otherwise, but let's just say he didn't testify. How does that affect how he looks? Does it make him look guilty? Does it look like he's hiding something? And what could it be that he's hiding? Could it be that he's hiding that he knows he's guilty, but he don't want to admit it? I mean, to me, it appears that could be what it is. But what do you think? You think there's anything behind that? I'm just putting something out there for the conspiracy theorists, because I know there's got to be some. And if you have a theory, offer it. That would be interesting to discuss, even if it's funny or humorous. But let's see here. Let me change it over now. Let's go over to the next one. Yeah, which is what should we do now? Let me see here. I had Mali is one of the stories, right? That would be, where's that at? It's up here. Right. It is. Let me see. Let me change this up. Sorry about that. Take this down. It would be, is it this one? Right. Here we go. It's this one. Should it be Russia? Yeah, this story is compelling. This is where it's going to get interesting today. Let me see if I can get that back up here. This is what's going to be interesting. Russia entering Cuban waters. Let's just go over to this one. Yeah. This is going to be very interesting how this plays out. Okay, now I'm not going to watch. I'm going to go to a reputable or what's known as reputable source first. Let's see here, because some of these, there's so much. Here we go. What to expect.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is preparing to hold military exercises in the Caribbean. Russian warships will begin to arrive near Cuba next week. All right, O'Keefe asked White House spokesman John Kirby about the possibility that Moscow could use nuclear power as part of the show of force.
I would just say that we have no indication and no expectation that nuclear weapons will be at play here in these exercises. Clearly, this is them signaling their displeasure about what we're doing for Ukraine. So we're going to watch it. We're going to monitor it.
CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd joins us now for our weekly national security wrap-up. Sam, I was even surprised to hear that Russia conducted these exercises, or that Moscow, rather, ordered these exercises back in 2019. What should we expect from these exercises that are taking place now?
Well, Lana, many analysts agree that this is really Vladimir Putin flexing his muscles. Last week, we learned that President Biden had agreed to let Ukraine use U.S.-manufactured weapons on the Russian side of their shared border. And this week, the White House alerted individuals that Russia is planning to conduct military exercises in the Caribbean, which they have done in the past. The exercises are anticipated to include both naval maritime ships as well as aircraft. And about 4 ships or so will be making port calls in Cuba in June and potentially in Venezuela as well. Now, the White House is seriously downplaying the significance of these exercises. They're pointing to the fact they've happened before and indicating that they do not pose any direct threat to the United States. As U.S. support for the war in Ukraine continues, we should expect Vladimir Putin to continue to flex his muscles on the world stage and to engage in further shows.
That is a very interesting response. Hold on, let me see. Let's examine that one real quick. Let me bring it back. Let's see here. What did the U.S. government respond?
This is seriously downplaying the significance of these exercises. They're pointing to the fact they've happened before and indicating that they do not pose any direct threat to the United States.
They do not pose any direct threat to the United States.
For Cuba in June and potentially in Venezuela as well. Now, the White House is seriously downplaying the significance of these exercises. They're pointing to the fact they've happened before and indicating that they do not pose any direct threat to the United States. As U.S. support for the war in Ukraine continues, we should expect Vladimir Putin to continue to flex his muscles on the world stage and to engage in further shows of force.
And let's turn to...
Yeah, so that's interesting. They say that they don't pose any direct threat.
Significance of these exercises. They're pointing to the fact they've happened in Cuba in aircraft. Our military exercise is in the Caribbean, which they have done in the past. The exercises are anticipated to include both naval maritime ships as well as aircraft. And about 4 ships or so will be making port calls in Cuba in June and potentially.
Did they mention the submarine? What? Hold on. Here we go. Did they mention the submarine? Okay, I'm not going to go to that network, but here we go. Let's see. Right. Let's see. Let's see here. Yeah,
Caribbean nation of Cuba, where authorities are awaiting the arrival of 4 Russian warships, including a nuclear-powered submarine. Cuba's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the vessels will dock in the capital city of Havana between June 12th and the 17th. However, none of the vessels will carry any nuclear weapons. The Cuban government says the stopover of Russian vessels does not represent a threat to the region, and this visit corresponds to the historically friendly relations between the two nations. Now, Cuba has been a key ally of Russia for a very long time. In fact, during the Cold War.
Do you think the U.S. government would buy that statement? Like, yeah, they don't pose any threat to us. And, this is what they've done before. And I mean, I agree with that posture, with that answer, but by no means would they not be checking out any possibility, and the fact that Russia says that there will not be any nuclear bombs on that, as a part of it. Let's hear what he said again one more time. I'm sorry. Here.
Or response to the historically friendly relations between the two nations. Now, Cuba has been a key ally of Russia for a very long time. In fact, during the relations between the vessels does not represent a threat to the region, and this visit corresponds to the historically friendly relations between the two nations. Now, Cuba has been a key ally of Russia for a very long time. In fact, during the Cold War, Moscow sent nuclear weapons to the island in 1962. The infamous Cuban Missile Crisis resulted in the 13-day confrontation with the United States. Since then, the more than 6-decade relationship has only strengthened after Vladimir Putin met with Cuban president last month. The Russian vessels arriving in Cuba include Russia's powerful nuclear submarine Kazan, frigate Gorshkov, the fleet oil tanker Pashin, and a rescue tug. Now, Moscow has not confirmed the information provided by Cuba, but the announcement comes a day after Washington accused Russia of planning naval exercises in the neighboring Caribbean region, including Cuba and Venezuela. Meanwhile, in a recent interview, Putin also warned that he could exercises in the neighboring Caribbean. The information provided by Cuba, but the announcement comes a day after Washington accused Russia of planning naval exercises in the neighboring Caribbean region.
Okay, so the U.S. already accused them previously of conducting military exercises in the Caribbean and Venezuela,
including Cuba and Venezuela. As it comes a day after Washington accused Russia of planning naval exercises in the neighboring Caribbean region, including Cuba and Venezuela.
Okay, so these are that statement that the U.S. government said, it's in a way, it's just a way of not answering it, the concern, really, downplaying it, right, is what they called it in the reporting. But it seems like in reality, they're all over this situation. But myself, here's my view of it. I don't see Russia as being able to win any type of conflict, with the U.S. directly, right? Not a war or a battle. I don't think so. They might win a battle, but they would lose the war, in other words. But that's my position on it. But I myself, the U.S., I would still suspect anything. I would suspect anything. And I think in terms of the equipment, the actual arms that they have, right? And vehicles and things like this, right? Airplanes, warships, military. When you compare the two military powers, let me see here. Let me come out of this for a second. Let's see. USA versus Russia military. Let me see something here. I don't think on paper the two match up, but in wars, you never really know. It's about like the surprise element, what you don't know. It's not really about what you know. It's also about what you don't know. And so if either one of these countries have weapons that the other one doesn't know about, that's going to be that could be a decisive factor in the outcome. So But militarily, let me see. Let me go back here for a second. Google, let me see. On paper, let me see here. Comparison 2024. All right. Boom. Get out of here. Let's see, what is this? Here we go. All right. Let me see here. In terms of land power, Russia possesses 4,150 infantry fighting vehicles. But first of all, I think the size of the two militaries, well, that's what I want to know. Let me see here. Let me go back here. How many personnel does Russia have? How many soldiers does Russia have? Russian armed forces has 3 million. What is this? 3.57 million, right? Okay, troops as of 2024, with 37% of them, or 1.32 million, being active military personnel. 2 million were reserve service members, and 250,000 were paramilitary forces. All right, now let me see here. So that's 3.5 million. You know, is this right? It says here that they have more active military personnel. Let me see. Yeah, maybe it's in the wording. How many people are in the military? The military includes 2,079,000 military personnel and 778,000 civilians as of September 2023. So that's, let's see here. Oops. Did I go to that? Did I go to this? I went to the wrong one. Sorry. Where is this at? Let me pull this up. So that's, let me add this up. I just want to be precise here. So million. Give me 2 seconds. 0, 7, 9. Plus. Okay, that's 2.8. And Russia has 3 points. So Russia has about 700,000 more military personnel. Actually, in reality. Now, let's see here. How many people does Russia have? They got 144 million people, right? That's what's backing up their the economy. That many people. How many is that? Yeah, that's 144 million, right? Let's see here. USA has 338 million. So the US has almost, you could say double, almost a little under that. People, right? So that means in a draft, the US can draft more people in a war, essentially. And Russia will be, they'll probably draft anybody they need anyway, So, but that gives you an idea. Now, let me see something here. USA versus Russia military power. Let's see here. Okay, let me slow this down a little bit. Right, everybody knows that. Moscow is Washington, D.C. All right, let's see here. Come on, man. Let's get up to the, okay, here it is. GDP. The GDP of, what does this say? Is this Russia on the left? Yeah, no, this is Russia on the right. Russia's GDP, that's annually, is $1,862,000,000. The US GDP is $26,950,000 a year. So the US economy is just like, Trump's, that's funny. I use that word. Trump's Russia's annual, economy, as far as the GDP is concerned, right? So you would expect that means military-wise, the U.S. has a lot more investment in their science, military science, probably weaponry, and also defense capabilities, you could say, being able to disarm Russian gear, military equipment, machinery, rockets, weapons, to be able to disarm them. I would suspect that the U.S. would be heavily invested in that annually in the defense. Now let me let's see if they mentioned the defense budget, which I'm sure they will here. Let's see. All right, total nuclear weapons. Russia has 6,255 nuclear weapons, and the USA has 5,500, right? So Russia has more nuclear weapons. But what do you think about that? I mean, in a war, how many nuclear weapons do you need to get the job done? You don't need many. Do you think you're going to miss 5,000 times in a nuclear war? How many chances do you get in a nuclear war to fire off? You see, you could be sure that if any of those amount of weapons, even 10% of those amount of weapons, even less than 10% of those amount of weapons ever go off, if 1% of those weapons goes off, you're gonna, human beings likely won't exist on Earth anymore. You see, it's going to poison this place completely. So do you need 6,000? Do you need 5,000? That's up to you. But that's what they're saying. I don't think this is going to be a factor myself in the conflict. But here we go. Let's see. You got to be prepared for everything. Yeah, deployed nuclear weapons. The USA has more deployed nuclear weapons. That's interesting. All right, let me speed it up here. Strategic nuclear weapons. What did that say? Hold on. Strategic nuclear weapons. Russia got none deployed. USA has 5,000 ready. Tactical nuclear weapons. Russia has more, far more, 1,920 versus the USA has 230. But still, you're talking about a nuclear weapon, right? But in any case, do you think that matters? How many nuclear weapons? Do you think that's going to be the decisive factor in any military engagement between the U.S. and Russia? You think nuclear weapons are going to be a deciding factor, or do you think it's going to come down to something else? First nuclear test night. Yeah, we don't need the background. Come on, let's get to other weapons. Okay, look at this. Subs. The U.S. has, is this right? Oh, damn, they're saying the range here? Okay. Maximum range, 15,000 kilometers. 18,000 kilometers. This is turning out to be interesting. Is Russia leading with tactical mid? Okay. Well, let me go back here for a second. Yes, I see. Okay. Well, not exactly. All right. What is this? Defense budget. That's what I wanted. The U.S., you could see this. You could see this. Let me blow it up. Sorry about that. Here. You see that? Defense budget. The U.S. defense budget as of 2024 is 831 billion, $831 billion, right? And that's basically, you could say 832 billion, but versus Russia's annual 109 billion. And see, this isn't just like the GDP thing and the defense budget thing. This hasn't had like a stark incline or change. This has been like this for a long time, for maybe 20 years, at least, maybe 50 years. The comparison between the U.S. military budget and the U.S. GDP versus Russia's it's just historically always been different, except after World War II, that's when the U.S. came up. So Russia started its decline. You see what I'm saying? So it's already always been a extreme difference in the amount of money the USA has invested in defense, and its military. Just like its GDP has been higher too. So that has something to do with it. When you look at $26 trillion GDP annually, and then when you look at the military budget being under $1 trillion a year, that's about, let's see here, what percent of that? That's like, let me see, 26 divided by 26 trillion divided by, what is it? Yeah, 1, right? Let's just say, yeah, that's 26%. Or what is that, points? Yeah, not 20. What am I talking about? That's 1%, less than 1%. You know what I'm saying? Right? Or less than 10%. I don't. What am I doing here? Let me pull up my own calculator real quick. Let me see. That's basically, it's very little. It's, what is that? That's 10%, I think, right? Or 5%. Hold on. Damn. Wow, I should know this already. Let me see here. Let me see here. What does it say here? It's 13, right? 13% of the federal budget. I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, it's over 10%. So, it makes you, it's a high enough number to still, that's a high number when you look at the GDP still. And then when you look at Russia's annual budget, it definitely stifles. It's 10 times the amount that Russia puts into its military. So I would think that the tactical advantage would be in the U.S. favor, pretty much, because obviously they're investing more. And so you're going to get more out of it. Ultimately, I guess you're going to get more technology out of this. So now Russia is basically in Cuban waters. So that's basically the comparison right there. What, the advantage. The U.S. has a lopsided advantage against Russia and its military. But that begs the next question, which is, what do you think the reasoning is for Russia being there? Do you think that Russia is coming in peace, just doing its annual parade and, hey, we're here again, let's keep the friendship up, Cuba? Or do you think that they actually intend on attacking the U.S. in some kind of way, even if it's just to spy, for that matter, right? Spying on the radio airwaves or doing whatever, even maybe doing other operations inside of U.S. territory in the waters, underwater, like attempting to mess up communication lines, whatever lines they might have in the sea, right? Remember the Baltic Sea? They had a explosion in a pipeline there. This was a couple years back. Now let me see here. Google Baltic Sea explosion. Right, there were 2 points where it. Let me go to this. I better yet, I'll go to YouTube and see and review it. Baltic Sea explosion. Right, and that's right outside of where I'm at right here. 1 year ago, right? Hold on. Video shows bubbling surface Baltic Sea caused by Nord Stream pipeline. Let me see. There was this is all, here we go. It must be this one. Let's go. Let's see. Come on. Yeah, this one is interesting. Let me see. I don't want to, let me go back. Sorry about that. I want to hear some commentary on it. I don't want to just have the music playing. Let me see. It's a massive explosion. Beirut. Is it this one? Let's see here.
One of the 2 ruptured pipelines. Denmark's energy agency says one of the 2 ruptured pipelines in the Baltic Sea appears to have stopped leaking natural gas. On Twitter, the agency said it had been told by the company operating Nord Stream 2 that pressure appeared to have stabilized, indicating that gas is no longer escaping from the pipeline. President Vladimir.
Now, you see, if you look right here, Russia has an inway to the Baltic Sea, so the it's always, in terms of its aquatic, activities, the military, operations in the seas, in the waters, whether it be through submarines, whether it be through, sabotage or other activities, planting bombs, who knows, right? Spying. It's always a possibility here. So this area by NATO is heavily patrolled. This is in the heart of NATO, really. Poland, Sweden, Germany, you know what I'm saying? Latvia, Estonia, all these countries, Norway, right? Yeah. So the idea was is that they had two explosions when things heated up in the Baltic Sea last year, or I believe this started up right after the Ukraine war. It had something to do with Ukraine and gas. This gas pipeline, obviously, and there was a sabotage. Remember, there was a debate between Russia and NATO about oil in Europe, selling the oil, if you remember. And then suddenly, this is what happened. The pipeline exploded. So here.
Denmark's energy agency says one of the two ruptured pipelines in the Baltic Sea appears to have stopped leaking natural gas. On Twitter, the agency said it had been told by the company operating Nord Stream 2 that pressure appeared to have stabilized, indicating that gas is no longer escaping from the pipeline. President Vladimir Putin on Friday accused the West of sabotaging the Russian-built pipelines, a charge vehemently denied by the United States and its allies. In Washington, US President Joe Biden dismissed Putin's claims as outlandish.
So there you have it, right? Exactly. That's the backdrop of it. So what do you think? You think that Russia having their ships and having the submarines and having personnel, obviously for both land and sea operations, right? What do you think the USA would be thinking to do to shore up, to defend from any other type of possibilities? And then also, check this out. I mean, not to go to like conspiracy theory thing, but like I said, I do welcome some conspiracies. And sometimes you don't know the difference if you don't discuss them from the ones that are real or worthy from the ones that are just crazy and absurd, right? But there is another aspect to this, like we were discussing this before. Tampering. When I said tampering, here we're talking about the tampering of the Baltic Sea pipeline, oil pipeline, right? As being a soft military thing. Now, in this article or in story we just reviewed, right, about the explosion from ABC, right? They said that Vladimir Putin, his response was to accuse the West of doing it, sabotaging it, so that Russia can't sell the oil to the EU. But the other alternative theory is that the NATO people accuse Russia of doing it. They're saying that Russia wanted to sabotage it because they wanted to put the pressure on Europe about oil, because Europe was essentially putting sanctions on Russia at that time for the EU for quote unquote using oil as a weapon, essentially against them, right? I believe that's what they said. Let's see here. Russia extorts Europe for oil. Let's see here. They accused them of this. In the same time, let's see here. See, Europe already was pressed for oil, the EU. So how would they benefit from blowing up the pipeline? How would they benefit from it, right? But at the end of the day, they still don't know who really blew that pipeline up, right? And so on that note, let's go back here. Right. We were discussing this sometime a few months back when this happened. Right now, here. Casino ni. Let's see here. Check out this. Right. And now we discussed this before. We seen this ship, it went down under the bridge, all the way under the bridge, starts turning and backing up and hits the bridge. It hits the bridge while backing up, right? It had to redirect itself to hit this. You see, it's turning. It had already gone under the bridge, and now by the time it gets here, it's turning, it's past the bridge, it's turning, and now it's backing up. Watch. Now it's backing up. And it's backing up, and it's still backing up, and then it hits right here. So, right, that's an accident, right? That was an accident. They still don't know what happened. They still don't know what happened with that. Of course, that's a land incident. That happened on the land. It's an accident. And a lot of times in warfare, what precedes it or what is becomes an interesting tool of war can be sabotage, can be covert military activities, right? Now, again, they're still trying to find out what happened here. They don't know what happened. But the let's see here. See, these explosions, they suspected, let me see here. Right. It wasn't just some explosions. Where is it at? Let me see here. Baltic Sea pipeline. All right, maybe that's what it was. All right, they suspect sabotage, but let me see. Didn't they? Okay, here we go. I think
tonight, sabotage at sea. That's what President Biden is calling the leaks and explosions along the Nord Stream pipelines. The Russian gas lines are essential. They supply 35% of gas from Russia into Europe. They've been attacked, and Nick Robertson is out front.
Like a boiling cauldron, the busy Baltic Sea bursting with gas from ruptured Russian Nord Stream reinforced pipelines. More than an inch of steel coated in places in approximately 4 inches of concrete. Not easy to break.
These pipelines are only in about 200 feet or so of water. And Russia does have an undersea capability that would easily lay explosive devices by those pipelines.
Denmark's foreign minister uncharacteristically cautious about Russian ships seen in the area days prior.
I don't want to go into speculation.
Unity among allies about not blaming Russia without evidence.
We're not going to get ahead of the investigation.
Danish and German warships deployed to secure the area. Norway putting its nearby energy infrastructure on heightened alert too, as Sweden begins an investigation. The Kremlin announcing its own preliminary investigation into possible international terrorism.
Here in Moscow, of course, many people say that we should look at who might benefit from this incident. And of course, they point at the United States, which might find it easier to sell its gas to Europe.
It could be weeks before European investigators get a...
Right. The other theory, that's interesting that he brought that up. The other theory is that it was the United States who could then sell more oil to the EU. Right? That's the alternative, the third theory. So one theory is that, Russia blew it up because they wanted to extort Europe for oil. And Europe was putting the sanctions on Russia. And Russia said, hey, we had enough. Now we're just going to blow the pipeline up and you won't get any Russian oil. How do you like that? And see if you can, live out the winter, paying more for gas, right? What is that going to do for your economy? And people saw the effects of that pipeline. Let's see here. Economic effects of the North Sea pipeline explosion. These were actually, it's suspected to be bombs, by the way, but let's see here. Today, yeah, there's a lot about sabotage here. That's for damn sure. But let me see here. They don't say. Oh, that's interesting how nobody covered that. They covered it. Well, maybe I wrote it in here wrong. How the sea pipeline. It hurt the EU's economy. That's the other aspect of it. Having to pay more money for gas, it definitely harmed the EU. People had to pay more for gas. So the cost of goods went up, essentially, for everything in the EU. It didn't go up. Well, it went up hard enough, you could say. People could feel it in their pockets. But it also drove some changes in industry, like the United States, like they said, could sell more oil. But let's see here what they say. Let's see. Hold on. Is this the right one? Here we go. Let's see here. Oh man, all these commercials. Oh well. Here we go.
The European Union issued a fifth round of sanctions against Russia.
And, ladies and gentlemen, I think that measures on oil and even gas will also be needed sooner or later.
Did you get that? Even gas will also be needed sooner or later. In other words, not now. Since the war in Ukraine began, the EU has imposed sanctions that restrict the flow of Russian money and goods. They've targeted banks, companies, individuals. But natural gas remains untouched. The EU gets nearly a quarter of its energy from gas, and nearly half of it comes from Russia, the world's largest gas exporter. Russia delivers the vast majority of its gas to Europe through this network of pipelines. And as the EU's largest economy, nobody buys more of it than Germany. Since the invasion of Ukraine began, Germany has paid Russia about 220 million euros a day for gas. Germany uses gas to heat more than 20 million homes and to power a lot of the country's industry. And Germany's government has spoken out against sanctions that would limit the flow of it.
It's not possible to cut the gas supplies.
But with every payment Germany makes to Russia's state-owned natural gas company, it's also paying for Russia's war. So how did Germany become so dependent on Russia for something as vital as their energy supply? And why can't they quit?
So they're so dependent on the oil that they blow up the pipeline. So you see, there's a contradiction there ultimately in the thinking that NATO or that the EU would have any EU state would have something to do with blowing up that pipeline, because Germany essentially would be more dependent on the economy would stress out, which it did, and the entire EU economy stressed out. because of that. So it would indirectly had an indirect effect on all of the EU, but it had a global effect as well, you know. So who would benefit from that? Would it be NATO? Would NATO nations benefit from that? Or did they feel the heat because of that? So that's why people suspect Putin or Russia may have been behind the pipeline explosion, right? Now, let me see here. Let's skip through this right here real quick.
They needed more energy to power their growing economy. Meanwhile, over here in Western Siberia, the Soviet Union had just discovered huge natural gas reserves. They had a network of pipelines to supply major Soviet cities, but extending their pipelines to potential customers in Europe would be a huge infrastructure project. Then, in 1969, West Germany elected a chancellor with a new foreign policy.
So we get the point here. So now let's go back to Cuba. Let's see here. Is this? Hold on now. This is national news. I can't play that one. Let's see here. Let's do this.
And several Russian warships, including a nuclear-powered vessel, are expected to arrive in Cuba tomorrow, where they will take part in military exercises for about a week. This comes after Russian President Putin said he could arm allies to take up against Western countries like the U.S., which support Ukraine. News Nation's Tom Dempsey joins us now. And Tom, what exactly do we know about these exercises so far?
Hey, good morning, Anna. Well, this morning we know that these military exercises will be taking place off the coast of Cuba starting tomorrow and going through towards next week. And it's going to involve the whole fleet from the Russian Navy, including a nuclear-powered submarine, an oil tanker, and a tugboat, among other military ships a part of all this. This has obviously gotten the attention of the U.S. government, who says they will be closely monitoring all this. But the Cuban government has already come out saying that these military exercises present no threat to the region and that no nuclear weapons will be used at any point during these drills. In that statement, the Cuban government wrote, "This visit corresponds to the historical friendly relations between Cuba and the Russian Federation."
Now, the first thing that comes to my mind, right, is, okay, what happens if something occurs and there's denial? Like, if something happens, would you expect another nation to take responsibility for it? Because again, if we look at the Baltic Sea pipeline, the North Pipeline explosion, it exploded in two places. You know, accident? No, but they still don't know who did it. No one's taking responsibility. They believe it's two explosions set by, militarily set. That's what folks really believe, but they don't know. No one's ever taken accountability for it. But that happened under the water, obviously. So Russia is here in Cuba's waters, right? In international water outside of the U.S., essentially. And they're doing exercises. But what if an accident happens? Like any kind of accident? Who would take responsibility for it? What if something somehow just happens? Right now, the U.S. says that Russia is no military threat to them, being there, right? They don't constitute a military threat. They're prepared, but the U.S. government is not scared of Russian ships or the exercises. They say that the U.S. government says that they've done this before, it's happened before. It's just some things that they do, exercises, and then, they go on their way. Right. But obviously, everybody's not seeing it that way. People don't buy it because just the day before, the U.S. talked about Russia's military prowess and how they engage and, meddling in the region. But let's hear some more here. Hold on. Let me go back. I don't this agency. Let me flip over to this one.
Welcome back here to the Hill on News Nation tonight.
News Nation, I don't really know. This is probably right wing. I don't know. Maybe it's left wing, whatever people want to call it. But at least they have this ex U.S. military person that's about to speak on it.
Vladimir Putin seemingly has a message for the United States. 3 Russian ships and a nuclear-powered submarine are on their way to Cuba. Now, the Russian Defense Ministry saying today that its military conducted drills over the Atlantic Ocean on the way to Cuba, which involve firing high-precision missiles that can travel over 370 miles. For context, Havana, Cuba is just 90 miles south from the southernmost point of Florida. Now, the movement's...
All right, so we see that now. When we compare the military budgets again, when we look into that, right? Whatever military gear or equipment or personnel they send to this region, right? They also risk one thing. It's not just that the U.S. risks something. The U.S. It's not just the idea of a threat to the U.S., but it's also another thing going on at the same time, and that is the fact that their military is close, is going to be surrounded by the U.S. military. It's going to be, and what does that mean for Russia's defense or prowess, military prowess, anywhere else in the world? Because you would obviously, the best way to stop Russians is to be able to get access to some of their stuff, to be in range of some of their stuff, to examine it, to see, to be able to examine it up close, right? I mean, that's the second best thing from seizing some of it, taking some of it. If you want to get on one of these ships, for example, it would be easy if they came into your waters where you surround them, right? They're docking in Cuban bays. They're going to dock in Cuba. I know it sounds, extreme, but I'm just saying for the record, the Russians, they put themselves in range of the United States and all of their little toys. Like example, let me give you an example because it does sound funny. Right. Hold on. Let me just right. Here we go. Hold on. Is this what? That was the wrong one. Hold on. 2 seconds. I'm sorry, y'all. I mean, here we go. You see this? They make them smaller, way smaller, obviously now. So if you, just think, and this is not, how long ago is this that they, started really introducing this kind of technology? This story is 6 years ago. You know what I mean? So, that's old. And so what would they have now? Is this the same one? Hold on, let me go back. I'm sorry. I'm sure they have some other stories on this. Let me see. Hold They're talking about stealth destroyers. Let me see here. Business Insider. Okay, this one. Check this out. Again, they're docking their ships in U.S. territory. Right. Created by the CIA. Let me bring this back. Here we go. Created by the CIA, and when? When is this? They say 1970s, right? The CIA had been developing a miniature listening device and needed a way to carry it, right? So again, you know, when I'm saying that Russia is docking its ships in U.S. territory, you know, it's also, you also have to think of it as, you know, okay, you're coming here in our waters. That means we have every possibility to put you under every type of microscope that we have. And I think ultimately that's an alternative way to look at, you know, what's going on right now. One alternative is Russia is like saying, you know, we're here, we can do these kind of missions, also conduct mock military missions, you know, in the waters, you know, just as, you know, as we've done in the past years, and just as the U.S. says they do in other places, right? But then we know that's the official story, but we know the underlying story is that they would like to just show off that they're here and a possibility of threat. You know, they would also like to do that, to talk that up also, if possible, right? And of course, anyone in their right mind would be like, okay, yeah, they're here. So no country is going to come up to you and say, by the way, we're out to destroy you. We're going to send some submarines. Nobody says that, or we're going to do mock military missions just to sneak under, you know, get a chance to get the first, you know, possibility to strike and catch you. You know, no, that's one way to look at it. And you would suspect that would be wild for anyone to do. But to me, it seems like it's Russia. They showing off what they got. The U.S. is going to use it for anything they can, you know. So I would look at it as Russia has the disadvantage in this. But let's play it. And again, we're talking about them docking in Cuba, right? Military personnel being in arm's reach of the USA, all of its defense capability. Let's see here. It had a miniature fluidic oscillator for the wings and a small amount of propellant produced gas. Damn, they explaining how they built this damn thing? What? So just spying, just in terms of spying is, you know, you get somewhere and ears reach and you record, right? So I'm sure they're going to have some, you know, this is not something that just audio spying is not what the Russians may be worried about. But let's just think about other capabilities that something like this could have. Maybe it has another capability, you know, maybe who knows what the capability is. Maybe it's camera to see, to look, examine. Maybe it's also not just audio recordings, but camera recordings, right? Maybe they got more than just this now. How long ago was this story? This is 7 years ago. You see, this is 7 years ago. So, you know, if they got a story about it, it's older in reality, but even the story is 7 years ago. We know they have them that work now. Let me see. Let's just go back. I want to find one that's the newest one that they have. otherwise, we have the idea now. Hold on, let me see. What is this new government's? They say one got caught spying in Africa. What? Let me see this. Sorry. That looks like disinformation. I'm sorry. That's obviously something. It's a fly, but it's not that small. This is not that small. But what does that mean? But how do you know this is a CIA fly drone? How do you know it's from the CIA? But I mean, you can't, it doesn't matter if that one is real because you know that they are real. I mean, this is what they're working on. This is the next level military. But let me see here. What else could there? What else? What else could the U.S. use that's a defense weapon that gives them capabilities to defend themselves from the Russians, essentially, if they were to pose a threat, right? What would
Welcome
that?
back here.
What would that defense ultimately look like? Uh, could they do something to defend themselves from Russia if Russia decided to attack? What other type of weapons could Russia use that are dangerous for the U.S. but um, but are not nuclear weapons? Let me see here. There's also one more. I believe they say. Um, let's see here. Let me go revert back to Google. Russia, Russia. EMP, right? Let's see here. Oh, I'm on Google. Sorry about that. Let me go here. Type it up. Yeah, let's see here. Actually, I don't see a story on that. Um, there's no story on it. But let me see here. Here we go. Okay, here we go. This is Al Jazeera. They're going to explain EMP.
A nuclear EMP, or electromagnetic pulse, is the electric shock wave triggered by a nuclear blast. They have the ability to fry every single electronic circuit in its range, destroying most devices unless they're shielded. The higher the altitude a nuclear weapon detonates, the wider the effect is over its target. All right, so what does this mean? It means once an EMP goes off, everything affected by it goes dark, literally. A single nuclear bomb exploding high enough can destroy a country's ability to light its streets, power its hospitals, run its stock exchange, access the internet, or use a phone. Most trappings of the 21st century would simply stop working. No car or plane would move, no police officer or fireman could be called, no supermarket restocked. Modern life as we know it would simply cease to exist. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has threatened to do just this, to detonate a single nuclear weapon high up in the atmosphere above the United States. And while very little blast damage would be felt, more than 320 million Americans would suddenly find themselves fighting for survival.
Do you hear this? So Russia, to harm the US, they don't actually need to strike the US, the land. They can strike the air and produce what's called an EMP effect.
Without power, without every single electronics.
Look, you understand this, what I'm saying. So that's what I mean. If you disagree, say so. If you agree, say so. Let me know what you think about that. And I would like to know what the conspiracy, any type of conspiracy theorist out there, what do you think about that? What do you think when the US says that Russia poses no threat? They don't pose it. And I guess that's predicated upon the fact that they're saying that Vladimir Putin says that there won't be any nuclear weapons on board any of those ships that are there. So that's what that's predicated on. But let's hear it again.
A nuclear EMP, or electromagnetic pulse, is the electric shock wave triggered by a nuclear blast. It has the ability to fry every single electronic circuit in its range, destroying most devices unless they're shielded. The higher the altitude a nuclear weapon detonates, the wider the effect is over its target.
The higher the altitude a nuclear bomb is detonated, the more effect, the greater the EMP effect will have on the ground.
All right, electric shock wave triggered by a nuclear blast. It has the ability to fry every single electronic circuit in its range, destroying most devices unless they're shielded. The higher the altitude a nuclear weapon detonates, the wider the effect is over its target. All right, so what does this mean? It means once an EMP goes off, everything affected by it goes dark, literally. A single nuclear bomb exploding high enough can destroy a country's ability to light its streets, power its hospitals, run its stock exchange, access the internet, or use a phone. Most trappings of the 21st century would simply stop working. No car or plane would move, no police officer or fireman could be called, no supermarket restocked. Modern life as we know it would simply cease to exist. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has threatened to do just this, to detonate a single nuclear weapon high up in the atmosphere above the United States. And while very little blast damage would be felt, more than 320 million Americans would suddenly find themselves fighting for survival. Without power, without blast damage would be felt. Nuclear weapon high up in the atmosphere, Jong-un has threatened to do just this, to detonate a single nuclear weapon high up in the atmosphere above the United States. And while very little blast damage would be felt, more than 320 million Americans would suddenly find themselves fighting for survival, without power, without lights, and running out of food. Protection against this kind of attack is enormously expensive. The price tag running into the billions and not guaranteed to work. Protection against this kind of attack, running out of food. Protection against this kind of attack is enormously expensive. The price tag running into the billions and not guaranteed to work. And although some exaggerated estimates claim up to 90% of Americans would die as a consequence, one thing's for sure, it would take months, if not years, for the country to fully recover.
So, you hear that? Of course, that's 6 years ago on Al Jazeera. So now let's go back to the fact that Biden, or not Biden, but the U.S. Government's response to Russia having a sub or having other military armament, ships, helicopters. Let's see what else. Let's examine what else is on that. But they already covered that. But there's definitely a nuclear sub. There's some fighter ships too. Right now, Russia says that will be no nuclear bombs on board. Let's see here. Russia Cuba. Right. They say there's no military armament on board. That's what they've been saying the entire time. Let's see here.
Du har en flåt på Skamle.
Do I want this one? Or hold on. Let me go back. It's so funny. Russia, Cuba, Russian. Let's see here. Is this the only? Here we go.
Venezuela. Meanwhile, in a recent and moving to the Caribbean nation of Cuba, where authorities are awaiting the arrival of 4 Russian warships, including a nuclear-powered submarine. Cuba's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the vessels will dock in the capital city of Havana between June 12th and the 17th. However, none of the vessels will carry any nuclear weapons. The Cuban...
Hey, that's today, y'all. That's today. That's right now. They're docking today. Right now. This day in Cuba. Okay, and let's see.
The government says the stopover of Russian vessels does not represent a threat to the region, and this visit corresponds. The vessels will carry any nuclear weapon. Affairs says the vessels will dock in the capital city of Havana, the arrival of 4 Russian warships, including a nuclear-powered submarine. Cuba's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the vessels will dock in the capital city of Havana between June 12th and the 17th. However, none of the vessels will carry any nuclear weapons.
Now, who says this?
The 17th will dock in the capital submarine. Cuba's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says.
Cuba's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says this. It's not the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I don't think. Let's check that out. But the Cuban Ministry of Foreign Affairs says.
The vessels will dock in the capital city of Havana between June 12th and the 17th. However, none of the vessels will carry any nuclear weapons. The Cuban government says to stop.
None of the weapons. They also say none of the weapons will carry, involve, or have
none of the vessels will carry any nuclear weapons.
They won't carry any nuclear weapons. That's what the Cuban Ministry of Foreign Defense says. I wonder if the Russian military says that. But in any case,
the Cuban government says the stopover of Russian vessels does not represent a threat to the region. And this visit corresponds to the historically friendly relations between the two nations. Now, Cuba has been a key ally of Russia for a very long time. In fact, during the Cold War, Moscow sent nuclear weapons to the island in 1962. The infamous Cuban Missile Crisis resulted in the 13-day confrontation with the United States. Since then, the more than 6-decade relationship has only strengthened after Vladimir Putin met with Cuban president last month. The Russian vessels arriving in Cuba include Russia's powerful nuclear submarine Kazan, frigate Gorshkov, the fleet oil tanker Pashin, and a rescue tug. Now, Moscow has not confirmed the information provided by Cuba, but the announcement comes a day after Washington accused Russia of planning naval exercises in the...
Now, did you hear that? Let's play it back. Russia says...
Moscow has not confirmed the information provided by Cuba.
Moscow has not confirmed the information provided by Cuba that it has no nuclear bomb on board any of those ships. You hear that?
But the announcement comes a day after Washington accused Russia of planning naval exercises in the neighboring Caribbean region, including Cuba and Venezuela. Meanwhile, in a recent interview, Putin...
Right? So Russia says that's not their statement. That's the Cuban military ministry. Let's see here who made that statement. Let's hear it back.
Will dock in the capital city of Havana are awaiting the arrival of 4 Russian warships, including a nuclear-powered submarine. Cuba's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the vessels will dock in the capital city of Havana between June 12th and the 17th. However, none of the vessels will carry any nuclear weapons. The Cuban government says the stopover of Russian vessels does not represent a threat to the region, and this visit corresponds to the historically friendly relations between the two nations. Now, Cuba has been a key ally of Russia for a very long time. In fact, during the Cold War, Moscow sent nuclear weapons to the island in 1962. The infamous Cuban Missile Crisis resulted in the 13-day confrontation with the United States. Since then, the more than 6-decade relationship has only strengthened after Vladimir Putin met with Cuban president last month. The Russian vessels arriving in Cuba include Russia's powerful nuclear submarine Kazan, frigate Gorshkov, the fleet oil tanker Pashin, and a rescue tug. Now, Moscow has not confirmed the information provided by Cuba, but
Moscow has not confirmed none of that stuff provided by Cuba. The information that they don't have, that there won't be any nuclear weapons on board any of those ships. But
the announcement comes a day after Washington accused Russia of planning naval exercises in the neighboring Caribbean region, including Cuba and Venezuela. Meanwhile, in a recent interview, Putin also warned that he could, in fact, arm other nations with similar weapons to target the West. This came after President Joe Biden allowed Ukraine to strike inside Russia with American weapons.
In the end, if we see that these countries become involved in a war against us, what they are doing makes them directly involved in a war against the Russian Federation, we reserve the right to act the same way. Overall, it leads to some serious problems.
So, with the unusual proximity of Russian military assets to the United States, Putin isn't attempting to project Russian military power. However, given Moscow's major setbacks in Ukraine, along with its over-reliance on pariah states such as North Korea, that message won't likely get much notice from Washington. From impeachment.
Exactly. So that's pretty interesting. That's happening today. That's all happening today. They're arriving today on the 12th. Right. And Russia can't confirm that they don't have any nuclear weapons on board. And on we have this, right, story here from, this is 6 years ago, right? Now we're talking about the military, Russian military possibly striking the U.S. or posing a threat to the U.S. How could it be done? Right. Cuba says that Russia won't have any nuclear weapons on board. Right. That Russia obviously must have assured them of that. We don't know because Russia can't confirm that statement by the Cuban military. Right. So let's say they do have one. How could they use it? And it only takes one, by the way. Do they have to hit the soil? Do they have to hit the ground of the USA? Do they have to kill people directly through a strike on ground? Do they have to do that to harm people, to harm life, to harm everyday life for Americans? No, they don't have to actually strike the ground, according to this individual here. Let's look at it. Let's look. Here it is.
Electric shockwave triggered by a nuclear blast. There's the ability.
EMP. That means you can trigger. You can make a nuclear bomb explode in the air above the nation, and it would have the effect of an EMP, meaning shutting down all electronic equipment. Let's see. Let's hear.
A nuclear EMP, or electromagnetic pulse, is the electric shockwave triggered by a nuclear blast. There's the ability to fry every single electronic circuit in its range, destroying most devices unless they're shielded. The higher the altitude a nuclear weapon detonates, the wider the effect is over its target. All right, so what does this mean? It means once an EMP goes off, everything affected by it goes dark, literally. A single nuclear bomb exploding high enough can destroy a country's ability to light its streets, power its hospitals, run its stock exchange, access the internet, or use a phone. Most trappings of the 21st century would simply stop working. No car or plane would move, no police officer or fireman could be called, no supermarket restocked. Modern life as we know it would simply cease to exist. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has threatened to do just this, to detonate a single nuclear weapon high.
All right, so they're talking about this. They were talking about this 6 years ago, when North Korea's leader Kim Jong Un discussed this, doing this. You see, with a nuclear bomb.
Up in the atmosphere. Modern life as we know it would simply cease to exist. Stop working. No car or plane would move, no police officer or fireman could be called, no supermarket restocked. Modern life as we know it would simply cease to exist. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has threatened to do just this, to detonate a single nuclear weapon high up in the atmosphere above the United States. And while very little blast damage would be felt, more than 320 million Americans would suddenly find themselves fighting for survival, without power, without lights, and running out of food. Protection against this kind of attack is enormously expensive, the price tag running into the billions and not guaranteed to work. And although some exaggerated estimates claim up to 90% of Americans would die as a consequence, one thing's for sure, it would take months, if not years, for the country to fully recover.
Right.
Modern life.
So they're claiming that if they launch a nuclear weapon, they only need one, and they don't have to hit the ground. They can hit above the atmosphere, and it will have this effect.
High enough can destroy a country's ability to. A single nuclear bomb exploding high enough can destroy a country's ability to light its streets, power its hospitals, run its stock exchange, access the internet, or use a phone. Most trappings of the 21st century would simply stop working. No car or plane would move, no police officer or fireman could be called, no supermarket restocked. Modern life as we know it would simply cease to exist. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has threatened to do just this, to detonate a single nuclear weapon high up in the atmosphere above the United States. And while very little...
High above the atmosphere. High above the atmosphere of the United States would have that effect.
Blast damage would be felt, more than 300, a single nuclear weapon high up in the atmosphere above the United States. And while very little blast damage would be felt,
very little blast damage would be felt.
More than 320 million Americans would suddenly find themselves fighting for survival, without power, without lights, and running out of food.
So they only need...
Protection against this kind of attack is enormously expensive, the price tag running into the billions and not guaranteed to work. And although some exaggerated estimates claim up to 90% of Americans would die as a consequence, one thing's for sure, it would take months, if not years, for the country to fully recover.
So it only takes one of these. It only takes one of these bombs, essentially, to go off in the atmosphere to have that EMP effect, which would be lights out for the U.S. apparently, or for most of it, the civilians, right? Yeah, as you heard, they described it many times now. Cuba says that none of the ships will have a nuclear bomb on it. And Russia says they can't confirm that, the Cuban military's statement on that. So there it is, folks. What do you think the U.S. military should do? What do you think the U.S. military is going to do? And what do you think the U.S. military's response will be? Publicly, regardless of what they do otherwise, without telling people. Let me see. USA response to Russia. Russian in Cuba. Let's say it like that. Let's see what happens. Why do the same? There's a lot of... How many of these news agencies? Okay. How come I gotta find something here else. U.S. response to Russian, let's do this. Ships in Cuba. All right. Let's just hear what the man got to say.
Saw that.
I didn't play it before because News Nation, yeah. I wanted to find something on the other outlets like CNN. I might have to say that. Let me see here. Let's say ABC. Did they mention it on ABC? Or is and that's the thing about they've had 9 years ago, 4 years ago, right? But no, apparently this is the only one that they have so far. So let's hear it again.
Seemingly has a message for the United States. 3 Russian ships and a nuclear-powered submarine are on their way to Cuba. Now, the Russian Defense Ministry saying today that
they're arriving today. This is the 12th, according to the Cuban military ministry.
its military conducted drills over the Atlantic Ocean on the way to Cuba, which involve firing high-precision missiles that can travel over 370 miles. For context, Havana, Cuba is just 90 miles south from the southernmost point of Florida. Now, the movements also come just days after the United States gave Ukraine the green light to use Western weapons within Russia's borders, to which Putin hinted there could be consequences if that happened. A Pentagon spokesperson telling News Nation today, quote, Russia's deployments are part of routine naval activity, and we are not concerned by Russia's deployments, which pose no direct threat to the United States. Back with us now here on the Hill, the retired of routine naval activity. That happened. A Pentagon spokesperson telling News Nation today, quote, Russia's deployments are part of routine naval activity, and we are not concerned by Russia's deployments, which pose no direct threat to the United States. Back with us now here on the Hill, the retired 4-star General Wesley Clark, the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO forces as well. General Clark, great to speak with you again. Thank you for being back with us here on the Hill. So, the Pentagon basically saying no biggie here. I don't know, sir. You tell me. Putin seems like he's trying to send a message. What is it?
Well, he is sending a message. I mean, there's no direct threat here. They're not going to attack the United States. Sure, true. It's all part of the sort of a hybrid warfare, bouncing back and forth, showing Russia's strength, showing the fact that they can come into our backyard, so to speak, and sail around with warships. And remember, Russia's very close friends with Venezuela's President Maduro, and Maduro is threatening Guyana. And the big resource in Guyana is about 90 miles offshore, big oil field that Exxon's in, Chevron wants in. Guyana doesn't have any means to protect it. But it's in, it's Guyana's, but Venezuela would like to have it. And so there's a little shadow boxing going on here. I don't think it's anything that's going to erupt in violence, but does it send a message to the United States and the world? Sure, and that's Putin's intent.
So shadow boxing, sending a message is the intent, I take it, as you say it. Is this it? Or do you think there's going to be a little more tit for tat, for lack of a better term, back and forth?
Right now, we don't see any indication of anything that's beyond this. But anytime that they go to Cuba, there's still an intelligence listening station in Cuba. Cuba's not exactly a U.S. ally, so it's never a wholesome visit. And remember, it also takes a little bit of the focus off what's going on in Ukraine, and that is in America's vital interest. Protecting the international rules-based order is America's vital interest, and that is threatened in Ukraine. And if Russia gets away with conquering Ukraine, China will certainly move in Taiwan. And so this is a part of a distraction.
I was looking at the numbers, General, and for our audience, just comparing where we are, United States compared to Russia. We have about 8 times the budget, the military budget of Russia. When you look at submarines, basically the same aircraft carriers, we have significantly more. Strategic nuclear weapons, though, nearly identical. Is that sort of the equalizer, or is it just that our military is significantly greater than theirs and they don't really pose a serious threat at this point in time?
Well, you can't look at the budget because they're not paying their people anything to speak of. And they don't cost things out the same way. So the budget's meaningless. They have a very effective nuclear force. We think it works. They also have tactical nuclear weapons that we don't have. And the White House has just said we're going to have to relook our nuclear weapons policy because China's building up its nuclear supply. So, for 30 years, we've sort of coasted on our nuclear defense and our deterrence. And it's clear that nuclear weapons have significance. They are useful, and we can't neglect them.
General Wesley Clark.
All right, there you go. Right. So, yeah. What do you think the likeliness of Russia doing anything? I mean, I think overall myself, if they could do anyone could do anything given if they had the capability, even if it was unsuccessful, they could still try something, right? Or there could be other threats, who knows, right? But the US military, they say that it's not a threat to them. So I also think that it's true the military budgets just far outweigh each other. So the capabilities, I think whatever Russia would be up to, the US government would be all over it. Also, isn't there something? I mean, I think they're essentially they're being spied on anyway. The Russia's government by the US government, I would presume, right, and vice versa. That Russia has spies too, but I would presume the US has a lot more and a lot deeper spy capability. So I would think them being surrounded by the US military wouldn't be good for them being, their capability to hide something or to do something that the US government wouldn't be aware of in advance. I think that's what it comes down to. How aware ultimately is the US government when it comes to what Russia's intent is? Do they intend to attack, and how well aware is the US government's knowledge of their intent already? So, you have it. It's your call. But check this out. Hunter Biden is the, other news, relevant news to a lot of people. I understand that, it's crazy. It's like, it's very, it's interesting that Biden's son could become a felon at the same time Trump, or just after Trump becomes a felon. Let's see here. Hunter Biden guilty. Right. He's found guilty. And Fox is going to talk about it. But let's see here. The Times. I should have never clicked on one of these right-wing ones here. Let's see here. I'm gonna go back, but
the jury in the Hunter Biden trial has reached a verdict in his federal gun trial. They have convicted him on all three felonies. That has just been broken seconds ago. We've got Richard Madden joining us in Washington. Richard, we are going through unprecedented, historic times in terms of former presidents and presidents' children being indicted on criminal charges. Remind us, how did we get here with Hunter Biden?
Yeah, we're using the word unprecedented several times, especially in this political cycle. But here we are after just 3 hours of the jury's deliberation. They reached a unanimous guilty verdict on all three counts. Count one is a false statement. That involves the firearm sales. Hunter Biden buying that gun, filling out the form saying when he bought it back in October 2018. Count two, issuing a false statement. That's when he ticked the box saying he wasn't using illicit drugs when he bought that gun. And count three, of course, is illegal possession of a firearm. That was when he owned that gun for that 11-day stretch. Now, the case itself was pretty cut and dry. No one was disputing the fact that he bought that gun, but the defense team were trying to illustrate that he wasn't addicted to drugs at the time when he purchased it, but clearly the jury thought otherwise. So this is a significant, and as we've been saying over repeatedly, unprecedented. The first child of a sitting president now guilty by a jury in the Biden's home state of Delaware. Now, the maximum sentence for all this is 25 years, 10 years for 2 felony counts, 5 years for 3 felony counts. Most legal experts say it's unlikely he will spend 25 years in prison, considering the fact that he is a first-time offender. But that really is in the judge's discretion when he issues his sentencing date. We're standing by for when that happens. But clearly, a monumental day here in the U.S. Hunter Biden guilty on all 3 counts. He does face 25 years in prison, but as I noted, it's unlikely that he will spend all that time behind bars. His father, President Joe Biden, has not spoken publicly on his child's specific case, although he did say that he would not pardon him in a recent interview. So this has huge political and legal ramifications, and now we're standing by to see what the next steps are. And the first major step, of course, is for the judge to issue a sentencing date.
Okay, as we're speaking, Richard, we'll keep the conversation going, but we'll also continue to look at that live shot of the courthouse in Wilmington, Delaware, because there's a possibility that we might hear from the attorneys involved in this case about how they're feeling about this verdict. So we'll stay on top of that shot for you in case you're wondering what exactly we're looking at. We're waiting for someone involved in the case to come out, make a statement to the press. Now, as we're also waiting for the judge to give an indication of the sentencing date, this is not the end of Hunter Biden's legal troubles. He's also facing a trial in September in California on charges of failing to pay over $1 million in taxes. Would that weigh at all in your sense, Richard, of moving forward?
Hold on.
This is not the end of Hunter Biden's legal troubles. He's also facing a trial in September in California on charges of failing to pay over $1 million in taxes.
Oh, so he's got another trial coming up over taxes, failing to pay over $1 million in taxes.
Would on Hunter Biden's legal troubles. He's also facing a trial in September in California on charges of failing to pay over $1 million in taxes.
Okay, that's in California state, yeah.
Would that weigh at all in your sense, Richard, of moving forward on how this gets interpreted by the politicians in Washington or even by the judge in terms of sentencing?
Well, it is a separate case, which isn't involved in this gun case. But clearly, Hunter Biden's likely his legal and personal troubles likely will be a drag on his father's reelection campaign in November. But you're right. This is just the first in 2 significant legal troubles facing Hunter Biden. There was a plea deal just a little while ago that fell apart where Hunter Biden would have avoided this whole trial and, of course, this criminal record that falls from it. So clearly, this is going to be problematic for Hunter Biden. Throughout this trial, his whole family has attended. They took up the first few rows, including his stepmother, First Lady Jill Biden, and prosecutors are trying to make that an issue, that perhaps that this was a way to sway the jurors by having the whole Biden family there. But clearly, as far as this case, it was pretty cut and dry, as I've been saying earlier. No one denied that he bought the gun. The focus of the case was really, did he buy it knowingly as a drug addict during that 1-month timeline in October 2018? And clearly the jury were unanimous on determining that yes, he did, and he was guilty of all these 3 felonies. And now, as we've been noting, the judge will then have the discretion to determine what the sentence will be for Hunter Biden. As we've noted, he faces up to 25 years in prison, but it's unlikely that that the judge will rule that he serves that time in prison.
Let's talk about Hunter Biden's voice during the trial. He did not testify, but the jury did get to hear him through excerpts from his audiobook, his 2021 memoir, which did address a number of the issues that were brought up during the trial. Talk to us about the decision to use the excerpts by the defense rather than having Hunter Biden actually speak.
Well, having Biden testify, called up to the witness stand, is a fairly risky strategy, and because he would be open to cross-examination. So that's why he did not appear on the witness stand. But Hunter Biden has been very open about his struggles with addiction, and as you noted, part of his audiobook was read to the jury. The prosecutors also showed photos of him holding a crack pipe. And we heard from his ex-partners, his ex-girlfriends, who dealt with Hunter Biden as he was struggling with his addiction, as they found his crack.
I forgot about those pictures. Let me hear that again.
The prosecutors also showed photos of him holding a crack pipe. And we heard from his ex-partners, his ex-girlfriends, who dealt with Hunter Biden as he was struggling with his addiction, as they found his crack pipes. He took crack cocaine. And all the while, his stepmother, First Lady Jill Biden, was listening to the testimony. So clearly, there was compelling evidence for the jury to make that unanimous decision today. So we are all just standing by to see what the judge determines his punishment should be.
CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Thank you for that. We will turn to you again as this story will continue to develop in the moments ahead, not even the days ahead. Richard, thank you for that.
Yeah. So that's Hunter Biden. He's guilty. That's going to be interesting in this election. Let me see here. Let me pull this down. So check this out. The last one, because we did Hunter Biden, but already, but the last one is going to be the U.S. military gets kicked out, leaves. So let's say leaves Mali, right? That's another. That's on the international stage essentially, and that is the case. They've been asked to leave, and they've been leaving for the last month. Now let's see here. Let's see if they have some. The French troops already left, and and that was done there was a bit of an uproar. So they left, more hastily. They were put out first and or asked to leave first, and then they left. But let's review that real quick. That happened first, and now the U.S. military is leaving. So,
and it was a very final end. Then is it to French involvement in Mali? The end of France in Mali?
Well, yes, indeed, very much. And it was a very secret and confidential operation, the military operation for this disengagement, as the military used to say. But there is now actually 2 days earlier than expected, no more French soldier in Mali. And it's really, really a huge turning point in this entire jihadist military struggle engaged by the French nearly 10 years ago in the region. Mali is the biggest West African nation, and it's a huge state collapsing with the affiliated to Al-Qaeda or Islamic State guerrillas moving forward from the north, the center, and now even close to Bamako, the capital city. So the French have been, they have been receding for the past 6 months. The French President Emmanuel Macron, on the 17th of February last year, actually ordered the military to pull out in a very, very huge operation to expel, to move out thousands of soldiers, thousands of containers. The logistics were absolutely amazing, quite unique in a sense. So they just crossed the last unit, crossed the border a few hours ago. We were with them. We spent a few days in this huge base in northern Mali, the base of Gao, which is an empty base now, ghost base, which is extremely amazing. All
right, so they left essentially.
The country is quite widespread and very much used and organized, I would say, by the Russian, which is the arch rival here with the French, as what we said in Bangui, in Car, a few months ago. So it's a very key moment. It looks very much that the French wants diplomatically or militarily to go on the offensive, but the anti-French sentiment is quite spreading, and many questions remain about the other Sahelian nations like the neighboring Burkina Faso, where there is a junta also.
Okay, so that has already transpired. This is what they were saying a year ago, essentially. You see, so that has all developed, and now France is gone, and now the U.S. military is being asked to leave. Russia moved in. Russia and the U.S., they're both there. Let me see here. USA, Russia, Mali. Let me type that in and see what pops up here. Of course, look at this again. Let me check. Let's see that. It's not current. Hold on. USA. I think they share. Here we go. Yeah. Yeah. It is now it's moved forward, and this is the situation now as of what, a month ago.
Running high as Russian and American troops share the same military base in Niger. Troops of the two rival nations are face to face, sharing an air base in Niger's capital, Niamey. However, reports suggest that the soldiers are based in different hangars. As Niger's junta rejects American military presence, the entry of Vladimir Putin's forces raises concerns over Russia's access to U.S. military installations. Our next report goes inside the tense face-off between the rival powers.
Imagine two rivals meeting in a foreign land. What do you think will happen? Well, there's bound to be some friction. In extreme situations, things may get out of hand too. An airbase in the West African nation of Niger is witnessing something similar, with tensions simmering. Russian troops have entered Airbase 101, which is next to Diori Hamani International Airport in Niger's capital city, Niamey. But the military airbase is also housing American troops. This comes after a decision by Niger's junta to expel US forces. The entry of Vladimir Putin's soldiers has put American and Russian troops in close proximity, at a time when the two countries are at loggerheads over the conflict in Ukraine. Reports say the Russian forces were not mingling with the US troops, and that they were using a separate hangar at Airbase 101. However, the presence of Russian troops has also raised concerns over the fate of American installations at the airbase. Addressing the concerns, the U.S. Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, said that the Russian troops did not have access to American equipment.
I think you know that Airbase 101, where our forces is a Nigerian Air Force base that is co-located with an international airport in the capital city. The Russians are in a separate compound and don't have access to U.S. forces or access to our equipment. And this is something that, again, I'm always focused on the safety and the protection of our troops, something that we'll continue to watch. But right now, I don't see a significant issue here in terms of our force protection.
The United States has been a key partner to Niger in its fight against the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda affiliates in the Sahel region. The US had constructed a $100 million airbase in Niger and has nearly 1,000 troops stationed in the country. But after the coup in July last year, the Niger junta rulers expelled American and French troops. Niger is not the only country in the region to expel Western forces. The US and its allies have been forced to pull troops out of several African countries after coups. West African nations like Chad, Mali, and Burkina Faso forced US and French troops out recently. And as discontent against the West grows in military-ruled African nations, both China and Russia have been making inroads. Beijing and Moscow have been strengthening their relations with African countries, pitching themselves as friendly partners without a colonial background in the region. So now, resource-rich Africa is being courted by the US, Russia, and China. By picking sides, will the continent usher in a new world order?
Exactly. That's an interesting question. But there you have it now. Now it's flash forward, and the U.S. has flash forward one more month, right? And the U.S. has something like, I think they're going to be out of Nigeria by September. Let me see here. USA promises to leave. Is it Niger? Is it September? September 15th. You see? Let me see here. Let me try to find. Oh no, this is, yeah, they were already there was already talks of leaving before that, but let me see. You know what? I wonder why you have to do this. So,
Hvem tror du så havde de højeste odds på landsholdet de sidste 12 måneder?
here we go.
Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in Niger, where the American and Nigerian armies have announced the departure of U.S. troops from the West African country during a joint press conference in Niamey. Both countries signed an agreement back in May for the withdrawal of U.S. troops. Since then, over 269 items out of 946 and several tons of equipment have already left Niger. Now, before this withdrawal, the U.S. had over 1,000 troops stationed at 2 bases in Niger. The bases were tasked with monitoring Islamist militant groups in West Africa.
The Nigerian Ministry of Defense and the U.S. Department of Commerce recognizes the joint sacrifices by the forces of both countries in the fight against terrorism. They are delighted by the mutual efforts of American forces and the efforts of American forces. They are delighted within the capacity building of the Nigerian armed forces and express their commitment to pursue cooperation in areas of common interest.
In South Africa, the clock is ticking for the...
Right. So they're out. They're leaving already. And let me see. U.S. military. Please. Niger. Let me see here. Boom.
The African nations of Niger and Chad have both been key partners with the United States in combating terrorist groups in the region. But as Ali Rogan tells us, that cooperation is in question now that both countries are ruled by military regimes.
The American presence in Niger and Chad gave U.S. troops eyes in the sky and boots on the ground in the region known as the Sahel, a stronghold for Islamist groups like ISIS and al-Qaeda. The Sahel accounts for nearly half of all terrorism deaths worldwide. Niger has been hosting nearly 1,000 American military personnel and an air base from which the U.S. launched drone operations. And special operations forces had also been stationed in Chad's capital. And U.S. soldiers have trained local armed forces in both countries. But the majority of forces in Niger are now on their way out. Those in Chad will follow suit while talks continue to possibly keep troops in the country. As U.S. forces withdraw, U.S. adversaries are looking to fill the void. Russia has sent military instructors to Niger, and Russian President Vladimir Putin hosted Chad's junta leader in Moscow this year. J. Peter Pham is former U.S. ambassador and special envoy for the Sahel region and a distinguished fellow with the Atlantic Council. Peter, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure to be with you, Ali.
How significant are these departures?
Well, in particular, the departure and the loss of the two air bases, one in Agadez and one in Niamey in Niger, are significant. It took a decade to build these facilities up, to train local forces with which we operated, and to carry out operations not just in Niger and not just in the Sahel, but actually these bases were useful for operations really across a wide part of Africa. So it's going to be a significant loss, a setback. There's no sugarcoating it. In time, substitute facilities may be found, but it's going to take time to build up the capacity and the partnerships that are being lost.
Could this have been avoided? What could the U.S. have done differently?
I think we could have been more attuned to the fact that winds of change were sweeping across Africa. Political elites are widely discredited in many of these Sahelian countries. Just because there's an extra-constitutional overthrow of a government doesn't mean that what came before was necessarily a Jeffersonian democracy. And also, quite frankly, our French friends and allies, they're old partners, but they've got a lot of baggage in this region, and they were the first kicked out. There's widespread unrest about them, and there's been some tainting by association. So we could have been probably managed the situation much better in terms of being attuned to what was happening, the dynamics, and also engagement with the regimes that have emerged.
And of course, what was happening are...
Yeah, what do you think about that? I mean, I agree actually 100%. The U.S.'s own approach didn't take leadership on the matter with how their own allies conduct themselves in the region. Like the U.S. has its own approach to Africa, and the French has their own approach, right? But the French has history that's widespread and also hasn't amounted to much for the people in the region. And the U.S. is not France, so they don't make France. They don't tell France what to do. But on the other hand, they do in a lot of other cases take the lead, at least in the conversation, and try to negotiate things between nations that could be better. So the diplomacy maybe wasn't there with the U.S., the proper diplomacy, and now it's backfiring essentially. But let's listen on. That's their approach. That's what he's saying essentially.
8 military coups in West and Central Africa since 2020. Why have they swept the region like they have?
I think part of it was with what came before. There were elections, but they weren't necessarily legitimate elections. And even where they were democratic elections, these were young democracies where governments were failing. When I was special envoy, I kept repeating that the region had a crisis of state legitimacy. The governments were not providing basic goods, services, and protection to their people. And so what people want is protection, security, and I'm not saying military guys are the solution, but they present an easy, credible solution compared with some of the civilian leaderships that came before.
What does it say about these junta leaders that they've all been shunning leaders from the West, the United States, also many colonial powers, including France?
Well, I think the one big mistake we make is to try to force them to choose us or the other guy. And I'm not, by any stretch of the imagination, anyone who knows me knows I carry very little water or any for our Chinese or Russian friends. But they're offering facile solutions. And when we tell them us or them, the big mistake we make is...
What does it say about these junta?
Oh, that's interesting. I agree with that. Let's hear it again. Hold on.
The leaders that they've all been shunning leaders from the West, the United States, also many colonial powers, including France.
Well, I think the one big mistake we make is to try to force them to choose us or the other guy. And I'm not, by any stretch of the imagination, anyone who knows me knows I carry very little water or any for our Chinese or Russian friends. But they're offering facile solutions. And when we tell them us or them, very often, because they can deliver quickly and immediately, that becomes the easy one for the juntas or other leaders to opt for. We have to figure a way to maintain our conversations, maintain our strategic objectives, while at the same time not betraying our values. And it's a tough balancing act.
Niger, this decision does seem final. The troops are leaving. But in Chad, though, is there a little more wiggle room there? There are talks going on. Could these troops actually come back to the region?
Well, I think the Chadians raise in their note a legitimate question. What are our forces doing in Chad? It's been several years since we've had direct military-to-military training assistance of the normal kind that one has troops stationed in these countries for. And part of it has to do with the nature of the regime in Chad, events that have occurred. I'm not trying to be an apologist for, but at the same time, they have a question asked. They're also going through an election period right now, which is a period of a little bit of turbulence. I think once they get through that, I think there's some serious, frank conversations that have to be had, and we'll see what comes out of it. Hopefully, we don't get pushed out of yet another country in the region, and especially a country like Chad, which of course is really at the fulcrum of not just the Sahel, but also Libya to its north, Sudan to its east. But it's been several years since Congress and the administration have given military assistance or training to the Chadians. Now, part of that was due to the nature of regime transition in that country. But at the same time, the Chadians have a right to ask, well, if you're not here to train us, what are you here to do? And the answer to that, of course, is, as we all know, is also help our French partners in some of their counterterrorism operations, but raises a legitimate question from the Chadian point of view. And again, we end up associated with a former colonial power that has baggage in the region.
You know, what are the American interests in Africa? You know, why are the U.S. military in certain nations? And theoretically, well, in that region, it was to combat terror, right? To support also the French in combating terror, but to combat terror in general, security. But if they're not training the troops there to secure themselves, then how are they furthering the security interest, right, of that nation that they're, in, that they're a guest in? And so, but what do you think about that? Should the U.S. have these bases, so many bases in Africa to is it necessary? But let's look at one more thing before I go out here. How many bases does the U.S. have in Africa? Let's see here. I don't, no. Hold on. Let me see something. USA military exercises. Okay, they have it in Kenya. Inside U.S. base in Djibouti. Which that's Kenya again. Okay. Somali training operations with Somali military. Okay, that's right. That's where it's posted. Wait a second. Let's check this out. I forgot. Before we go to the military bases, I just want to see what the latest is on from this network here. First News. They actually pretty good on the international news, actually. So, but here we go. Let's see what they say.
The junta is done with the U.S. where an exodus is taking place. An exodus of U.S. military personnel. About 1,000 American troops are in Niger. They were deployed to combat terrorism. This country has been hit by a terror insurgency. The previous government was trying to counter it with the help of French and American soldiers. But a coup took place in Niger last year. The junta ousted the French as soon as they took power. But they let the Americans stay for a while. Now it seems that the junta is done with the U.S. as well. Niger and the U.S. negotiated a withdrawal deal last month. The U.S. has till September to leave. So the soldiers have begun packing up. Here's our report.
A few days ago, there was a ceremony in Niger, a relatively somber procession. There were just soldiers in attendance, troops from two countries, the home nation, Niger, and U.S. military personnel. The troops gathered around an aircraft, an American military transportation plane, a C-17 Globemaster III. The troops had gathered around the aircraft to watch it depart.
Ce vol-là
The June 7th flight of the U.S. Air Force's C-17 Globemaster III from Niamey Air Force Base 101 marks the start of a series of wide-body aircraft rotations to repatriate personnel and equipment in accordance with the May 19, 2024 agreement. Since the agreement on the withdrawal of U.S. troops was signed on May 19, 2024, more than 269 of the 946 troops and several tons of equipment have already left Niger.
The U.S. military is on the clock. They have to leave Niger by September 15th. That means the U.S. has about 3 months. 3 months to pack up all their equipment and make their way out of Niger. It won't be easy because the US has invested a lot in Niger's defensive capabilities over the years. The Americans were using 2 air bases in Niger, called Airbase 101 and Airbase 201. 101 was a common base, shared by the Americans and the French. It's located in Niger's capital, Niamey. The US was initially using this for its aerial counterterrorism operations. But a few years ago, Washington decided it needed a new location, a base closer to the terrorists. So between 2016 and 2019, they built another base, Airbase 201. It's located near the city of Agadez. The base was specialized for MQ-9 Reaper drones. The Americans built the base at a cost of over $100 million, but now they have to dismantle it, take it apart and ship out the pieces, or
$100 million for that base.
Risk their equipment falling into 9 Reaper drones. The base was specialized for MQ-9 Reaper drones. The Americans built the base at a cost of over $100 million, but now they have to dismantle it, take it apart and ship out the pieces, or risk their equipment falling into enemy hands. The US has experienced this already, when it withdrew its forces from Afghanistan. The Taliban now use the American weapons and vehicles left behind. The US has 3 months to avoid a similar scenario in Niger. But this time, it won't be militants who'll take over the equipment. It might be the Russians. Russian soldiers are already in Airbase 101, the base in Niger's capital Niamey. After the Americans leave, the Russians will be free to use Airbase 201 as well. Considering the current hostilities between the two nations, it would be a loss of face for the US if Russian troops got hold of American equipment. Niger is trying to soften this blow.
Finally, the two parties reiterate that this withdrawal of American forces will have no impact on current relations between the Republic of Niger and the United States of America.
The junta claims there are no hard feelings. It's all business. It has just gone a different way, opting for assistance from Russia instead of the West. Niger has every right to do that, of course. It's a sovereign nation that is entitled to pick its partners. But the withdrawal paints the US in a poor light. It wasn't allowed to stay, despite having spent millions on Niger's defense. That is a failure of US diplomacy. And it shows that America's clout around the world has started to shrink.
Yeah, they said that's a failure in U.S. diplomacy, a missed opportunity, essentially, a missed opportunity. But let's. I agree, a missed opportunity.
Post reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison.
Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, what do y'all think about that? Let me know what if that's of interest to the U.S. to be there, and did the U.S. bumble the opportunity while being there? Could the U.S. have done more in terms of diplomacy? And diplomacy is simply, talks, initiating talks about what more the U.S. could do outside of maybe security, but what else could they do to improve the lives of people in Niger? That to me, I would think if our military is there, it should be also to their benefit in other ways, not just military security, because how do you secure a country that is not that can sustain itself? How do you do that, right? So so they're saying it's a systemic problem there. They think that the US or the French in the US were not good partners in security. That's what the Malian government says. So we'll see what comes out of that. But yeah, folks, I appreciate y'all. What's up, Ralph? I see you down there. You should have hopped up, bro. Should have hopped up here. I got I dropped the link earlier, but here we go. In case anybody want to hop up. But let me know your thoughts on this. Jade, let me know your thoughts on this. And yeah, Donnie as well. Andrea, I see you. Y'all were here waiting, man. I could not. I'm sorry about that. I was just caught up at the time. I couldn't really log on at the moment I wanted to. But I appreciate everybody. I will catch up with y'all and soon. In the next couple of days, I'm going to be linking up with Todd, doing an interview with him about his cards and also about some other things, that his philosophy and what have you. So on that note, I bid everybody a wonderful day. Appreciate y'all. Blessings.
This is kind of like a prayer going out to all the peeps close to me and dear to me, the ones that's been there for my whole life, the ones that came later in my life. Yeah, I appreciate all the blessings God has given me. And I want to repay it to you like this. Clap your